Zion, dear Zion, land of the free.
This is Ben McClintock and Enoch Moore of defendingutah.org, where we think right and wrong, not right and left.
Don't forget to subscribe to the Defending Utah YouTube channel. You can also find us on Spreaker, iTunes, and iHeartRadio. All right, we have with us Neal Harmon, the CEO of Vidangel, talking about a lawsuit and counter lawsuit that's going on with the Hollywood industry right now. Thanks for joining us, Neal.
Thanks for having me on.
So this was something that we noticed that there was a lawsuit against you, and there's been a lot of these over the years against services like yours. And I noticed that you guys have been really careful about making sure that you have learned from those other, mistakes of claims of copyright infringement. And but the Hollywood studios haven't felt the same way. It seems like they're not liking what you're doing. Tell us a little bit about the lawsuit and what's going on.
Yeah. Well, again, thanks for having me on, Ben and Enoch.
Yeah.
You've been observant. Vidangel, we were founded researching what had happened in the past. We were founded when we, as young fathers, some brothers and I that started the company together, we were young fathers, and we were saying to ourselves, why isn't there filtered streaming? Why doesn't that exist? It seems like it wouldn't be that difficult to do on the technical level. Why isn't it there? And we had been customers of Clean Flicks and Clean Films and Clear Play, and I'd always enjoyed watching movies that in a way that matches our value system, and so we just said, why not? And I started tinkering with making a version of streaming filtering back in 2012. Which seems really late on the scene. Like it seems like something like this should have been done, 5 years ago. We now 4 years later have discovered why this hasn't been done. And just to get into the history of this, in 2004, a lawsuit was actually initiated by a Clean Flicks franchisee in Colorado. And this individual felt like he should sue 15 of the most powerful directors in the world and ask a judge if what they were doing in Clean Flicks was lawful. And what they were doing was they were editing the movie in its entirety as they deemed family friendly, and then they were burning it to a disc, and they were selling that disc or shipping it out. In the case of Clean Films, they did it more like Netflix DVDs by mail. But at the end of the day, there was one edit. It was based off the company's choices, not based off the user's choices. And that lawsuit eventually pulled in all the studios, and the studios won. The companies were also dragged into it. There were around a dozen companies, including ClearPlay. And in 2005, there was a law that was passed and signed into law by President Bush. This law essentially outlined that Congress was upset that there was a market need and Hollywood hadn't just figured out a way to fill it. And so they were trying to carve out rights for a family that balanced the needs and the rights of the director with the needs and rights of the family. And in so doing, they said, okay, first of all, you've got to have an authorized copy of the movie. So somebody has to get paid. Mm-hmm. And then second, it needs to be the user, not the company that's deciding what's filtered. And third, and that has to be done in a private setting. It can't be done publicly. It can't be done out of the, in a theater. It needs to be done in a private setting. And then third, in order to protect the directors, there can't be a fixed copy of the altered version of the work. And Congress felt like that this balanced the needs of both parties, but recognized that the Directors Guild had no intention of working with these companies to find a solution, and therefore Congress passed a law. Now, in that law, there were two methods for filtering. One was within the home, with a technology in the home like ClearPlay that has a DVD player device that filters in the home. And the other one is that the filtered work is transmitted, is the language that the law uses. And now here we are more than 10 years later, 11 years later, and Hollywood studios are suing Vidangel because they believe, at the core of this, they believe that the authorization, the power to authorize, it lies with the studios and not with the family. Whereas Vidangel believes that the power to authorize resides with the family, as long as the studios are getting paid and we're operating within the law. So that's probably more content you want, but I wanted to lay a foundational background on what's happened, because what really happened, some people say today in Vidangel's lawsuit, Vidangel, the real reason for this lawsuit is because you guys aren't paying a streaming licensing fee. Totally false. And Vidangel, for business reasons and otherwise, would be happy to purchase a streaming license fee, given that the streaming license comes with the right to filter.
Right.
But that one's not available for sale. So Vidangel has, its entire history has been trying to find out how to make sure that the studios get paid while making it possible for families to filter. And that's the real crux of the lawsuit, in spite of the fact that it's positioned in another way. And that's the exact same problem that was existing in 2004 for all these other companies, that Congress originally passed a law so that there would be a way for the companies to operate without having to get authorization directly from the studios. So that's the real meat of the dispute. And the reason that Vidangel filed an antitrust lawsuit is because the studios, we have learned, because of documents that have been posted online, that Sony documents that have been posted online, you can see through these documents that were somehow leaked at another time, that there is an agreement between the Directors Guild with the studios that says, you guys can't edit anything except for what we've pre-agreed to, and that's the television and the airlines. But anything outside of that, you can't do it unless you come back to us for permission first. And then the second thing that we see in these documents is that when the studios then sign a deal with Apple, Roku, Google Play, Amazon, their agreements explicitly say that you can't allow for filtering, and you can't allow for third parties to filter on top of your system. And so what the crux of the antitrust lawsuit is that the studios hold a significant liability for entering into agreements that prevent a whole entire part of the market from being able to operate in the competitive space. It's really kind of twofold. We're defending ourselves and saying, okay, we are buying the only copies that we know of in the market that are available for filtering so that the studios can get paid. Studios have a problem with that. Well, either give us a license so we can do this, or you're going to have a serious liability on your hands because you're not allowing this to happen anywhere. So, I probably butchered it, and you'd have a better interview if you met with David Quinto. But at the end of the day, when the four of us brothers back in 2012 were asking ourselves, why hasn't this ever been done? Why isn't somebody doing it? It's not because of the technical limitations. It was because the studios have actively tried to prevent this from coming into being, and they were so frustrated. We learned that they had fought and lobbied against the Family Movie Act back in 2005. They did not want it passed, And essentially, since they lost this battle in Congress, now they're going to go try to win it in court.
In court.
Yeah.
Wow.
So Neal, there's clearly an established market for filtered movies. More people, they'll make more money by allowing this to happen in the long run. So why wouldn't the industry want that revenue stream? One would think, okay, well, if it's not, must not be about money to them. What is it about to them then? Why do they care about suppressing this so much?
You know, I can only surmise, because I haven't been able to talk to the stakeholders who signed the Directors Guild agreement. But I think that there's some economic principles that are working out here that David Quinto has explained to me. One of them is simply when the Directors Guild created itself, and that it's essentially a union, right? It's a union that protects these people's rights. If in their minds, just the way that a union for any kind of a worker, usually unions are set up to protect people's pay. In the case of the directors, there's a lot of other reasons that they get together as a union. And when they sign an agreement, they get a payout up front, and then they get some kind of a rev share often on the back end for how they make money off of the work that they create. The filtering industry would have pretty, meaningful impact for the studios and increasing distribution for their titles. But the amount that the directors actually feel that impact by the time it funnels through to their agreements and they get paid is small enough that the friction that's created, because the director feels like, I've created this piece of art and I've put my entire soul into this. My whole entire career has been put into this. I've built this skill set. I've built these connections. I've poured over every single line, every sound effect in the editing room. And how dare you not watch it the way that I tried to create it for you? I mean, if you don't want to watch it that way, then just don't watch it. So that's the director's position. They want to have the last sign off on what happens to their films. And that's the crux of the matter. That's the reason the DGA would never show up to the Family Movie Act hearings. The reason that they opposed it is the reason that they fought the original lawsuit. And it's the real crux of the reason in this instance. So I think that there's an element of the fact that they don't feel the monetary gain as much as the studio does. The second thing is that I think that there's an element of the fact that those of you who've lived in Provo know that there is a bubble of culture in Provo, right? There's a certain way that people are and that people take for granted, and they don't even realize that Utah Valley is a certain way until they're away from it, or until somebody who's never experienced it comes in and says, this is different than anything that I've ever lived before. The same thing happens in Hollywood. Hollywood has created a culture of content creators that probably can't even see in front of their faces certain things that are happening. They're like below the surface. They don't even understand that they're going on. And as a result, I think that they don't recognize how big the market is because they don't understand it. They don't understand the culture of it. They don't understand why anyone would want to do it. And so they would never believe that there would be a market for it. So when I'm an entrepreneur and I go and I try to sell an investor, it usually is easier to sell an investor who sees themselves as a customer for the product than it is to sell an investor who doesn't see themselves as a customer. And it's the same way with these directors. They say to themselves, who are the people who would actually want to remove something out of my movie and not just experience it the way that it is? And they genuinely can't understand it. And so we have this divide between two cultures. Now, I think one of the things that is difficult for our culture is that sometimes the highly religious have framed this as this great battle that they're trying to destroy us and trying to ruin our values and everything. And I'm not, I don't know. I can't pin that nefarious of goals. I think it's more of an issue of they just don't understand. They want their movies created the way that they want them. They want them distributed the way that they want to. And they're not close enough to parents and to parenting to realize that this is important. I've met personally with high up officials inside of studios who are parents, who do see things more like we do, who wish that this problem could actually be solved, but they don't see how to solve it because of the way that the system is set up there in Hollywood. So that is a long-winded answer.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It seems like, though, because their content is edited for television, that they could, if they don't understand it on a philosophical level, they can understand it on a legal or logistical level, that there are people that do want that, and that because they allow it for TV, that they would allow it for a service like yours.
Well, the difference is between TV and a service like ours is that they get to have the end say. So in TV, they get to say, okay, we're cutting this version for the Muslim countries, or we're cutting this version for the FCC, whatever. The airlines, we're cutting this version for the airlines, and we're cutting this version for the TV. And the director at the end of the day gets to say, okay, I sign off on this cut.
Oh, the director does get to do that on those.
Yes, they have the ultimate say on what gets signed off. They may sign it away and say, studios, I'm okay with you deciding how that happens, but they got to sign.
Wow.
It's ultimately controlled by them. And Vidangel, there's that control isn't there. They don't get to decide what offends a family. They don't get to decide what a family pulls out of the movie, what parts of the movie the family views. And that's the fundamental difference between Vidangel and these. There is a cognitive dissonance by the fact that when that market's big enough and they say, oh, there's a ton of money in airlines and we have to do this to do airlines, and there's a ton of money in TV and we have to do this in TV. The fact that they've done it and that they've agreed to that brings me hope that one day that there will be a business solution to this problem rather than a legal solution. Between the industry, because at the end of the day, I mean, all of us, even those who like to filter, rely on the content creators to create the content that we enjoy.
Right.
So
what would be, do you think, why would the average person care about this lawsuit? Would this affect the average person? We've kind of laid out the case of why the studios care about this. Why would our listeners care about this?
Well, I think the number one thing for a listener who sees the world more like me, where I'm a young father. I have many young children, and I want to be able to enjoy good content, and filter out a few things out of movies, so that they don't get repeated, or they don't get played out in our house.
Uh-huh.
For somebody who cares about that, or worries that the culture of society is increasingly not matching their own culture, and wants to have an entertainment that they can enjoy when those cultures are separating. Ultimately, the Vidangel battle is about who has the authority, whether it is the content creators that ultimately have the authority on this issue, or if it is the parents. Mm-hmm. And if Vidangel fails, in my mind, is highly, highly, highly unlikely. Like the law, the history, our story as a company, our customer base and why they use the system are all on the side of this prevailing in the courts and long term. But if we were to be shut down and the studios did get their way, then my prediction, based on 10 years of history, is that there would not be a filtered streaming license forever. I mean, in the streaming age, there just won't be filters.
This would be the nail in the coffin, you're saying.
Yeah, parents won't have the right to filter anymore. So, they will for a short period of time when they can watch discs in their home with a ClearPlay player or something like that. But eventually discs will die. And eventually people will move more and more to devices that don't even use discs, and that's the way they'll watch their content. And so we really see this as a higher battle than Vidangel per se. We see it as a battle that goes beyond what our company's trying to achieve. And it's an important one. So
I think I agree with you. You're right. The battle for parental rights is a big one here in Utah. Right? There's a lot of parents that are concerned about parental rights in a lot of different areas. You know, it's big in education right now, right? It's big in a number of places, and so I can definitely see the parallel how the same battle is here over, is it the parents who get to choose what enters their home, or are they at the mercy of, you know, someone else? Now, of course, we can always choose to just not watch the movies then, and I'm sure many people will go that route, and that's why the market.
But that's not a real solution. So I'm just going to speak to that for a second.
Sure, go ahead.
This is from David Quinto, who is not, he's not part of our culture. He actually wouldn't even be a user of our product, but he believes that we're on the right side of the law, and that's why he's joined Vidangel, because he believes that this should be an American right, even if he wouldn't use it per se. He said, the one thing that as we become increasingly a diverse country, and in fact, you know, at each other's necks across parties and across sometimes races or political spectrum, you know, whatever the case, there's more and more conflict. He says the one thing that ties us together is our popular culture, and as Americans, and if you completely exclude a group from the popular culture, it has a separating, and it like he sees it, that's very American for our people to be able to come together in a melting pot, for our people to understand one another's culture, for people to share the same media experiences. And so he thinks it would be a travesty if families who don't want those elements of content in their home, that their children and they themselves will not be able to be part of conversations that are part of popular culture. And so for him, he just says, it's just not right. So yeah, you could say you still have a choice as whether you let it in your house at all, but that's not really a choice.
Sure, I get what you're saying there. I can say I love The Matrix, but the only reason I ever watched The Matrix was because of, you know, CleanFlix and ClearPlay and those kinds of services in the first place.
That's right.
Right?
That's right. And then you can have a discussion about The Matrix and what happened and how he, you know, was trapped in this world and the parallels to our own times and all that kind of stuff. Never be able to have those interesting conversations without experiencing the film.
Right. That's a very good point. And even just movies I might have watched anyways, such as I just watched on VidAngel the other day with my children, the Angry Birds movie, and I thought that was full of, you know, all kinds of inappropriate things I didn't want my 5-year-old daughter to hear. And so we didn't even take them to the movie for that reason. We thought, you know, it's a kids movie, but they're really throwing some, you know, nasty jokes in there. And then because of VidAngel, it was more comfortable even watching something I would have watched any other way.
Yeah,
so
Zootopia had like 4 instances of blasphemy, and it's targeted at children.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's clear that even the movies that are supposedly for kids are increasingly getting away from a value set that matches my own family.
So politically speaking, on where I think this affects liberty in general, there's a common feeling, especially here in Utah, that the right to private property is inseparably connected with freedom itself. And so I would feel that this battle is in the arena of defending the principle of private property. The studio does own it in the beginning, intellectual property. It's their right to do what they want. But at some point after it's sold, that purchase transfers who is the private property owner, and it's now in someone else's home. And so the private property rights, I think the law you originally explained, the Family Movie Act, did you call it?
Yeah.
Seemed to have done a good thing of separating that exact idea of the private property rights of the content creator and then the private property rights of the owner after they've made the purchase and transferred those rights.
I absolutely, I agree, totally agree on the level that I think you and I would say we'd hate a world where a director is not able to go and publish a message in the way that they want to publish a message in the public sphere.
Absolutely, right.
I mean, because, you know, that would silence political dissent, that would silence so many things that freedom of speech entails. But as soon as you go through the doors of a home, there has to be a distinction that occurs there, and there has to be a consideration of someone's rights to consume what speech they want to within their own home.
And once you purchase something, it becomes your property. I mean, if they apply this to other things, if you buy a coloring book, does that mean they get to decide what colors you use?
Yeah, no kidding. Or like I saw this article about tractors. There's so much software in tractors now that farmers can't even truly buy their tractor because the John Deere's and Massey Ferguson's of the world are now licensing tractors to the farmers because their bread and butter is the software. And essentially we become
a renter as opposed to an owner of an object.
Of everything.
Yeah.
Everything. Yeah. And so, I get your point. I hadn't fully thought about it in terms of property rights, even though it's really clear when it comes to a disc that there is a transfer of ownership for that particular authorized copy of the film, and
Right.
And the rights of the studios end as soon as that sale occurs.
Right. Because that disc is now your property to do with as you choose. Otherwise, it's not your property. So,
That's right.
What other implications can you see in the lawsuit on both sides of winning and losing? What are the long-term, not just for your company, but for the industry and for maybe even bleeding over to other industries?
I wouldn't venture to guess how this will impact other industries indirectly, because I'm not exactly sure how I think when we get further along in the litigation and see where the sides kind of coalesce around their arguments on the battle, that we'll better understand how this will affect other sectors and other spaces. So, I just don't really know. For us, we're keeping it simple. And for us, this is simply a question of whether or not we just stop buying certain movies altogether, or if we're still able to buy movies and filter them and watch them as we wish.
So what's the next step for you guys?
The next step is Monday, we file our opposition to their motion for preliminary injunction. And we're outlining why the court should allow Vidangel to operate, because it is in the public's interest for that to happen, while the legal questions are debated and answered.
So they're trying to shut you down before the lawsuit's settled?
Yes.
Gotcha. So how long do you expect this to go on?
Probably
before it's settled.
Probably between 2 and 5 years.
Okay. Well, we appreciate you being with us, Neal, and thank you, Neal, for being on with us to talk about what's going on with Vidangel.
Thank you for upgrading our business in one sentence. Oh shoot, that's funny. Yeah, you bet. I'm glad that we could have the chat, and let me know if you have any questions. And I appreciate you trying to get support out there for the ideas of liberty.
So even though this is a legal battle, is there anything our listeners can do to help you out?
Absolutely. So there is a website that was created by a very avid customer and family out of Florida called savefiltering.com. You could go there, and they've started a petition. There are a number of other things that you could do. If you are a customer, you can send out support an email stating why filtering is important to your family, why you use Vidangel, and we will be able to submit those records and that proof to the court on why it's for the judge to see why Vidangel is in the public interest. The other thing that you could do is there is if you are a user, there's a donation page on the website where you can donate to our litigation. So Vidangel, interestingly, is one of the first times in history that crowdfunding has funded litigation. Most companies don't have that kind of passion behind what they're doing, but it's a testament to the fact that people really want this. And the reason that we started that campaign is less because we're super appreciative for customers for having parted with their hard-earned money in order to help us in the battle. But it's the ultimate statement of support when a judge knows that they have no ulterior motive for giving that money, except that they want filtering to exist. So that's really helpful. I think if there's anything else, so savefiltering.com, you could make a donation. You could email us with a testimony of why you use Vidangel, and that's it. And just follow us, and those are the big things where you can help.
Great. All righty. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Ben and Enoch.
Make sure to subscribe to the Defending Utah YouTube channel. And also, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Gordon's Carpet Cleaning. If you want the job done right, call Gordon's Carpet Cleaning, 801-368-0140. That's 801-368-0140. We also want to let you know about the Editor Lady. She will help you publish your book or do any editing for a price you won't believe. Give the Editor Lady a call at 801-948-3667. That's 801-948-3667. Or email her at theeditorlady@gmail.com. We all know that we need to get prepared for job loss, disasters, and just plain life. You need to go to emergencyseedbank.com. That's emergencyseedbank.com. Enter coupon code DEFEND.UT to get your deep discount on Urban Emergency Seed Bank of 23 varieties of non-hybrid, non-GMO seeds, double hermetically sealed in Mylar for seeds that last for decades. emergencyseedbank.com, coupon code DEFEND.UT. Ben and Enoch will be back next Thursday from 10 to noon on K-Talk AM 630 in Salt Lake City.